Japan is one of the most influential nations on Earth today. But that raises a fascinating question. How did a chain of mountainous islands on the edge of Asia become a global powerhouse? To understand that, we have to go back thousands of years, long before skyscrapers, bullet trains, and modern technology, back when Japan was not a united nation at all, but a scattered collection of small communities living across isolated islands. These early peoples survived by fishing the seas, farming rice in narrow fields, and building simple tools from the materials around them. Life was difficult, and survival depended on cooperation. Nature shaped everything about how they lived and how they believed. Mountains, rivers, forests, even unusual stones were thought to hold spiritual power. The people believed divine spirits, known as kami, lived throughout the natural world. To them, the land itself was alive, and respecting nature was part of everyday life. As generations passed, some villages grew larger and stronger. Powerful families began taking control of more land, more resources, and more people. Small communities merged into larger clans, each led by chiefs who competed for dominance. Alliances were made, broken, and remade. Conflict became common as rival groups fought for power. Eventually, one clan rose above the rest. That family claimed they were descended from the sun goddess, giving their rule divine legitimacy in the eyes of the people. Over time, that bloodline became what we now know as Japan's imperial family, one of the oldest hereditary monarchies in history. But early emperors did not rule with absolute control. Their authority was limited, and powerful clans still held much of the real influence. So Japan looked outward for answers. Across the sea stood one of the most advanced civilizations in the world, China. Japanese leaders studied Chinese government, writing, religion, and philosophy. They sent envoys abroad, learned from what they saw, and brought new ideas back home. From China came the writing system that helped record laws and history. Buddhism arrived as a major new religion, adding new spiritual and philosophical ideas to Japanese life. Systems of government became more organized, more centralized, and more sophisticated. As Japan absorbed these influences, it transformed rapidly. The imperial court established grand capitals, first in Nara and later in Kyoto. Kyoto would become the cultural center of Japan for centuries, a city of poets, scholars, temples, and aristocrats. Art flourished, literature expanded, religion shaped public life. On the surface, the emperor remained the heart of the nation, but behind the scenes, power was shifting. While emperors ruled in name, wealthy and powerful clans increasingly controlled the military, the economy, and the countryside. The emperor remained sacred and respected, but real authority slowly slipped away from the throne. And in that power vacuum, a new force emerged: the samurai. Originally hired as elite warriors to protect the interests of powerful landowners, the samurai quickly became far more than soldiers. They developed into a warrior class defined by discipline, loyalty, and honor. Their skills in combat made them feared. Their code of conduct made them respected. Over time, the strongest military leaders among them rose even higher. These men became known as shoguns, military rulers who controlled Japan in practice, while the emperor remained a symbolic figure. The emperor stayed in Kyoto as a spiritual and ceremonial leader, but the shogun commanded armies, enforced law, and governed the nation. For centuries, Japan was effectively ruled by warrior governments. Society became highly structured. At the top stood the samurai elite. Beneath them were farmers, whose rice production supported the nation.
Then came artisans and craftsmen who made tools, armor, and goods. Merchants, despite often becoming wealthy, ranked low in status because they produced nothing directly. Everyone had a place, everyone had a role. But beneath that order was constant tension. Rival samurai clans repeatedly battled for dominance, civil wars erupted, territories changed hands, villages were destroyed, entire regions were pulled into violent struggles for control. And yet, in the middle of this chaos, Japan's culture deepened. The samurai were not only fighters, they trained their minds as well as their bodies. They practiced swordsmanship and strategy, but also meditation, calligraphy, poetry, and tea ceremony. To them, discipline was not just about war, it was about mastering the self. The warrior class had become more than an army. They had become the architects of Japanese society.
But while Japan's warrior rulers shaped the nation from within, they also made a decision that would define the country for generations. They shut the outside world out. For more than 2 centuries, Japan lived in near total isolation. Foreign influence was tightly restricted. Trade was heavily controlled. Most outsiders were banned from entering, and Japanese citizens were forbidden from leaving. The goal was simple: protect the nation's traditions, preserve stability, and prevent foreign powers from gaining influence. For a time, that strategy worked. Japan remained culturally distinct, politically stable, and largely untouched by the upheavals transforming the rest of the world. But isolation came with a hidden cost. While Japan stood still, other nations raced ahead. Then, in 1853, everything changed. Massive black warships entered Tokyo Bay. They belonged to the United States, and to many Japanese, they looked like machines from another world. These steam-powered vessels carried weapons far beyond anything Japan possessed. Their arrival was not a request, it was a warning. America demanded that Japan open its ports to trade. Suddenly, Japan faced a brutal reality: remain closed and risk destruction, or adapt immediately. The country was thrown into crisis. Some leaders argued Japan should fight to defend its independence. Others believed resistance would be suicide. They argued that if Japan wanted to survive, it had to modernize, and fast. That conflict triggered one of the most dramatic political shifts in modern history. The shogunate collapsed. Power returned to the emperor in an event known as the Meiji Restoration. Under the young emperor's leadership, Japan launched into a period of transformation so rapid it stunned the world. The old feudal order was dismantled. Samurai privileges were abolished. Their swords, once symbols of status and power, were taken away. A modern national army replaced the warrior class. Railroads spread across the country. Factories rose in growing cities. Schools expanded. New laws and institutions reshaped the government. Japan sent students, officials, and scholars across Europe and America to study modern science, engineering, military systems, and political structures. Then they brought that knowledge home. In just a few decades, Japan did what many nations took centuries to accomplish. It transformed from a feudal society into an industrialized, modern power. But rapid progress came with painful sacrifices. Many who had once held prestige under the old system lost their place in society. Former samurai struggled to adapt. Traditional ways of life disappeared. Entire generations watched the old Japan vanish before their eyes. Still, the country pushed forward, and the transformation worked. By the early 20th century, Japan had become one of the strongest nations in Asia and one of the first non-Western countries to successfully industrialize at a world-class level. It defeated major powers in war. It expanded its military. It built an empire. Japan wanted more than survival now. It wanted recognition. It wanted power. It wanted to stand equal to the great Western empires. That ambition drove Japan deeper into militarism and expansion. It seized control of territories across Asia, including Korea and parts of China. Its influence spread rapidly, but so did conflict. Then came World War II. Japan entered the war as part of the Axis powers, fighting against the United States, Britain, and their allies. In the early years, Japanese forces advanced quickly, capturing territory across the Pacific and Asia. But momentum did not last. The tide turned. Japan's cities were bombed relentlessly. Industries collapsed. Supplies vanished. Then, in August 1945, the world changed forever. Atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Entire cities were erased. Hundreds of thousands died. Japan surrendered soon after. The empire was shattered. The nation was devastated. Its future looked hopeless. But Japan's story did not end in ruin. It rebuilt. Piece by piece, factory by factory, city by city, the Japanese people reconstructed their country from the ashes. They focused on education, manufacturing, innovation, and quality. Companies that would become globally famous emerged during this rebuilding era. Japanese products earned a reputation for precision and reliability. Within a few decades, Japan had achieved another miracle. It rose from wartime destruction to become one of the richest and most technologically advanced countries in the world. Today, Japan stands as a place where ancient temples sit beside neon skyscrapers, where centuries-old traditions exist alongside cutting-edge robotics, where history and innovation move together. Its journey, from scattered villages to imperial rule, from samurai governments to global economic power, is one of the most extraordinary transformations in human history. And maybe the most powerful lesson in that story is this: a nation can suffer defeat, lose everything, and still rise again, stronger than before.